Wiz. What's up, man?
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, sir?
Very, very well. Super excited about this.
Yeah, no, thanks for being on. So, right, anybody that's into habits and understands, and I love I can riff with all day. So let's jump right into it. First, let's give us a quick background in terms of how you got to where you are now, and what got you into habits.
Lovely. So I'm a habit coach, right? So I started this whole habit coaching as an industry here. And this was about 5, 6 years ago when I realized that people were too scared to start making changes because they were thinking about, using willpower and momentum. And I realized that all you actually need is understanding what are the habits that you need to tweak. So that's how we started thinking about about habit coaching and getting people to change their habits with regards to that. And how do you, like you said, like move towards happiness and health, right? And at the end of the first year, we started the Habit Coach podcast, and that was a huge success. So that's how the whole ball started rolling. And here we are. We're 700 episodes in.
Wow, 700 episodes. Okay, so I'm sure you've got a wealthy knowledge. Let's dive right into it. With habits, give me your take. Maybe a loaded question, but I feel like the word habits is got a lot of connotations to it. It means a lot of different things to a lot of people. What does that word mean to you? And just give me your take on it.
So the way that I like to define habits are our actions or our thoughts that are repeated at a set interval or set frequency. So, very often we only think of our habits as the actions that we do, right? Like I went to the gym today, or I brushed my teeth, those actions. But we don't realize that our thoughts are also habits. If you wake up every morning and say, life sucks, well, that's a habit. If you wake up every morning and you're full of life, that's a habit. So those thoughts are habits. And if we can start changing the way we start thinking, then our actions flow so automatically after that.
I like that. Yeah. So just to kind of expand on that, right. I look at it as, I like to use the phrase because I think it puts it into simple concept for people. We are our habits are us. And you kind of just said it, they become automatic and from waking up in the morning to taking a shower, these are all habits. And, I think a lot of people just look at habits as they're either good or bad. But there's a lot of neutral habits that we have, right? That are, in my mind, opportunities. So like, let's say, waking up in the morning, that's a neutral opportunity. That's a neutral habit. We all wake up, right? But then it's like, okay, then what do you do right after? And so I like to I call them clusters. I form these little groups. It's like, okay, my little morning cluster right when I wake up. I do grab my phone, but hold on, stay with me. Because a lot of people say, don't grab your phone, do what. But for me, I actually like to start my morning with motivational stories and inspiration. So I go to an app called Flipboard, and I've customized exactly the types of things I want to see. So instead of seeing stuff on, how many killings and deaths there were the day before and politics, I see motivational thing on habits and gamification. And that just kind of revs my engine and gets me going. And I do that for about 5 to 10 minutes until I feel like I'm kind of awake. And then I get out of bed.
Lovely. That's actually what I tell people, that we all think of habits as subconscious, right? We don't think about it when we're doing it, but there are conscious habits and then there are subconscious habits. Now, how do we make as many of our subconscious habits conscious? That means you are aware of the choices that you're making. Like you could have easily gone to a news channel and flipped through whatever was going on there, but you chose an app that you can curate, right? So that's a conscious choice. So it's important to start creating those conscious choices, and well, then your habits all turn into something that are serving you and not things that don't serve you anymore.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, when it comes to, I call them failure and success habits. Most people call them bad and good habits. Do you have a formula for how you help people take the bad habits that they've formed and transform them into the good ones?
So the way I look at it is there are no bad or good habits, just like you said. I look at habits that serve you and habits that don't serve you. Okay, so our bad habits were actually habits that served us at one point of time. So for example, maybe that drink that started off in the evening served a purpose, right? Maybe it was serving loneliness, or it was serving as a companion for that evening, or a full stop to the day. that was serving a purpose. So if you immediately pull it out, what happens is that you leave a void. So instead, you have to figure out what you can put in that actually serves you more than the drink itself. And that's the way to start getting rid of these habits, because they're not good or bad. They're a crutch. Now, if you've broken your leg and I pull the crutch away from you, you're going to fall. So as a result, don't think about getting rid of bad habits in that way. Think of them as, do they still serve me? Are they of any use to me? Right? Are they doing any good? And
Yeah.
that's how you start making these changes.
I love that. And I mean, that's exactly right. And it's so simple, but I feel like most people just don't look at it that way. Like, you go through life, you've developed these habits that you've got, and you just kind of are on autopilot, and you're not thinking if they're serving me or not. You're like, well, this is just what I do. Right. And so it's super important to sort of step back and take a look, like, is this serving me or not? At one point it did, right? And so, like, I think that's a good way to look at it, because even something like alcohol, it's like, okay, well, it served a purpose in that you started drinking to fit in, to relieve your anxiety, whatever that was, and then maybe those things went away, or you've gotten better or whatever, but you're still drinking, and now it's taken over a big part of your life, but it's not
Correct.
serving a purpose anymore.
It's not serving a purpose, so why have it?
Yeah. So what do you in terms of taking a habit that doesn't serve a purpose to one that serves a purpose, do you have a process for people to identify these habits?
So it starts off with creating an intention. So very often when we try to make a change, we look at motivation and inspiration, right? So the word inspiration is what moves us to making a change. But instead of inspiration, I think of intention. Intention is, what is the deep why behind you want to making that change? And if you don't get that deep why, don't do it. Like, why did you start running a marathon? Oh, because my neighbor was doing it. It seemed like a cool thing to do. Don't do it. You don't have a strong enough intention, right? So unless you get that intention right, and there are enough things that you can try, right? You don't need to try everything. So get your intention right. After that, there are 3 golden rules that I follow. So the first one is, make it stupidly small. So small that you feel stupid not doing it. The second golden rule is, make it extremely easy. That means remove all friction from the process. Anytime you realize there's an excuse coming up, that means there's friction. How do you get rid of that friction? So make it extremely easy. And then the last rule is, never miss 2 days in a row. If you don't miss 2 days in a row, that is where the consistency for the habit comes in. And that is where the compounding of that habit comes in.
Yes, it sounds like you've read a lot of the same books I have on habits and the science and whatnot. Have you read James Clear, Atomic Habits?
So Atomic Habits is very, very good. In fact, I'm rereading it again because I've just come out with a book and I wanted to make sure that we are not overlapping on any of our concepts. But Atomic Habits talks about the habit loop, which is a very different structure altogether. It's like the Power of Habits and Atomic Habits follow a similar one with a little bit of emotion thrown into it. But I've never noticed a loop working with all my clients. So in fact, I don't recommend that format of working on it, because I think it works well when you're thinking of a branded product that you're trying to sell out. So with our company, we do those habit loops. But when you're working with like clients one-on-one, a more systematic, small approach works better.
Yeah. And so tell me, right, so you're saying using your 3 golden rules, you mean? Stupidly small,
Correct.
Extremely easy, and never miss 2 days in a row. Right. So what is your take on, right. And it's interesting with James Clear's Atomic Habits. I've reread it a couple times, and right, I'm a big fan of rereading things because you always get more out of them. What I've found is, I think he's got great concepts and is extremely knowledgeable on the habit formation process. And, kind of, he gives you some tips and tricks on how to sort of, reduce friction. I think I love that term. I think I heard you use that as well. Basically make the ones you want to form easy, and the ones that you don't want to form basically hard, right? Stuff like making it obvious, making it invisible. What he doesn't do, though, is take it to the level of a system to hold yourself accountable. And so I talked to a lot of people that have read the book, and they're like, yeah, I was so inspired, and I'm like, well, are you using any of it? And it's like, once in a while you'll get somebody that's been like, yeah, I do temptation bundling, or, with this one thing, or I do habit stacking, with this one thing. And it's like, okay, well, one thing's better than nothing, but these are, things that you can apply to your whole life. And I think we all need that accountability system, which is something my system provides. And it sounds like yours as well.
Correct. Especially with with the reward cycle, when it comes to rewards, many people get the reward wrong, right? Or I can't think of what to do with the reward. So as a result, that habit loop doesn't finish. It does go into completion. Or you get the wrong reward completely. I worked out so I can have a muffin, right? Or I worked out so I get a donut. So those rewards don't really function well. And which is why you notice in the system that I follow with my clients, the reward is not part of it. It is so simple that you should not even feel like you can't do it. Why is it so hard?
Let's talk about that. So, right. I think a lot of people, now this is the key. And I totally agree with you that if you, I think a lot of us, it's like the New Year's resolution example, right? It's the one time of the year that we're sort of forced to take a look at our lives, which is unfortunate. We should be doing it, daily.
All the time, yeah.
Daily. And then what people do is they go, holy schmoly, look at all these bad habits I have, right? And then they go, all right, what's my top one that I want to stop? And then for maybe a week at tops, usually maybe 1 to 2 days, like you'll see a lot of people in the gym, or you'll see, people are going out and they're cleaning out their cupboards and they're getting good food, whatever, calling up grandma who they haven't spoken to, but it doesn't last, right? And it's like a temporary solution. And, it kind of goes back to, you never miss 2 days in a row. Like, you have to have some sort of accountability system to hold you to these habits. Otherwise they're never going to form.
So you have to have accountability partners for sure. And you have to have some form of tracking. Those two are extremely essential. In fact, whenever we start making changes, even if you're doing a corporate workshop, we always have an accountability partner system built into it. So, you have someone that you report into.
Yeah. So, and what is the accountability system that you help people use?
So for me is getting people to meet each other and have an accountability buddy, right? Or we have a Telegram group where people say, oh, I did my Tabata today, or I did my gratitude today, or I did this today, whatever habit that they're working on. So that there is a community, people see, this person's doing it, I should also be doing it. It reminds them. So that community forms and they become accountability partners. We've given permission to, pull each other up, maybe, push each other if need be. So in that way, it works well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Right. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's a lot harder for us to hold ourselves accountable. Cause like we were saying with the New Year's resolution, it's like you do it for a few days and then you go, oh, this was too hard. And kind of also you were saying, like, if you have too many that you try to do, it's like, okay, well, I want to do this and this and this. And all of a sudden you're trying to do all these and you get overwhelmed and okay, well, I knew I couldn't do it anyways. Right. So you start small and you have somebody that you got to report to, because when you know that your ego is on the line, right? When ego steps into it and all of a sudden, somebody's going to be looking down on you, or so you think, right? Oh shoot, I better do this. And that, to me, that is humongous. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. On a side note, it's a funny story. So I had these CEOs that were my clients, and every time they had to report into me about the habits that they did, they turned into little children missing their homework from school. They were shy. They didn't want to, take my call. So it's fun the way that, you go back to that system of accountability, like how you were when you were a child now as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And do you have, so, your main three: stupidly small, extremely easy, never miss 2 days in a row. Are there in between those? Do you have little tips and tricks to kind of help? Like, so like when you say make it extremely easy, like in what regard? Like, do you give specific examples, and do you do it does that work for all the major areas of your life? Physical health, relationships, your mindset, career and finance, or is that just certain areas of your life?
No, everything can turn into that. And the whole idea is, how do you grow with your habits? So you start small, but you don't stay small. As the habit becomes easier, as you become better, as you become stronger, the habit grows with you. right? So, like I keep telling people that we see these fantastic billionaires and their habits, and we read about their habits and we get inspired and want to do it. But we don't realize how many years it took to get to that spot. They started small at some point of time till it became easy. Then they leveled up, then they leveled up, then they leveled up. So this whole leveling up process is half the fun of doing these habits, and figuring out where you start and then where you end. So for example, yoga for somebody who's just starting could be just sitting on your yoga mat as an extremely small starting point, right? You don't have to do any stretches, no yoga, 1 hour class. But for a yoga teacher to create a habit, maybe 45 Surya Namaskars is her starting point, So we all start at different places. For each of us, stupidly small is different. And we take that as our base and then we continue from there.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so, like, how many people have you been working with, and what are some of the things that people say after working with you for a little bit that, that they've been able to accomplish? I guess some success story type things.
I think the biggest success stories are when the family members start seeing a change. Like I keep telling, like, the family is the last that's ever going to start seeing a change in you, let alone start changing themselves. But I think for me, the biggest change is when they start seeing a difference in the person that we're working with. Then say, tell me how you did it. And they start making that change. I think if you can bring it to that level, in my books, it's a complete success. Because, when a person changes completely, they almost become unrecognizable to themselves, to their friends. And that is where the essence lies. Because once your identity shifts, you shift as a person. There's no going back then, right? You are changed forever. I think that is the way that I see success.
I think that's absolutely true. And right, it's a pretty neat thing when you start helping people and then you start getting feedback and they say, my family noticed this and that. Like, there's no better feeling, right?
It's like when you start losing weight, you will feel it after a few weeks. Nobody else is going to compliment you for a month or so, right? So you have to stay with that for a while before somebody starts noticing you. And to get to that stage takes a long time.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the law of compounding earlier, and that's what people don't realize. And we're living in this Insta society, where you want to click a button and have it now. But you can't click a button and lose 10 pounds, at least not the right way. So it takes time, right? It takes time, and people don't want to wait. But if you are able to be patient and stick with it, and you start seeing those results, and there's no better feeling, right?
Absolutely.
So last question I have for you. Some of the top habits that I usually ask this to my guests, but it could be either you or people that you've helped coach. The 1 or 2 best habits that you've seen people been able to form that is completely able to transform their life.
I think getting your morning routine in place is the most important. So if you can focus on just creating 3 habits for your morning routine, I think you're good to go. One habit that I start off with everybody is a gratitude practice, because without gratitude, you're not in the right frame of mind to do anything else the rest of the day. You're just grumpy, you're sulky, you feel the world is against you. So unless you get that in, everything else is, you're building your day on a weak foundation. So gratitude for sure is one of the most important ones that are there. The second one are growth habits that I call. So what kind of growth? So it could be either a learning habit that people start. Listening to podcasts, listening to shows like this, listening or reading a book. Many people don't have that as a habit, and hence they stay stagnant. So when you have gratitude, when you have learning, the next thing is it drives you to action, right? And whatever you start learning, if you can put into action, you made a dramatic change already in your life. So this whole loop of learning, action, I think is one of the strongest habits that you can start creating. So it starts off with a lot of people, listening to the Habit Coach podcast, right? So say these are people I've never met in my life, but we communicate over DMs or emails. And they say that, I sit down and take notes from what you say, and then I implement. And I always say, tell me, what have you done with it? And then they show us this journey. And then they say, what I did was then I told 4 people about it. And I taught this to 4 people. Now, once you teach something that you've done, which you have learned, that cements itself in your mind, and that you can't get rid of. Right? What we normally do is we learn and then just try and disseminate out to people and vomit it out to show off we know these things. But unless you've actually put into practice, it doesn't actually make a difference. So when people make this change of learning, doing, and then teaching, I think that is one solid habit, or more like a compound habit to do.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad I asked you that question. Those are 2 great answers. Well, thank you so much for being on. This has been really, really useful. I mean, I love the deep dive into habits. Is there anything that you want to leave our viewers with, or where people can find you and get more information from you?
Sure, you can go to my website. It is called Awesome 180. So AWSOME 180. Follow me on Instagram. We put up lots of content. The Habit Coach podcast, of course, is available for everyone. 700 episodes, so go enjoy. You can binge listen to them. And yeah, I'm so happy that we did this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll reach out to you. I'd love to be on your podcast as well. Talk some more habits.
For sure.
Got a lot more to say.
Well done.
Done. Okay.
Thank
I love
you.
it. All right. Well, thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye. See you.
Okay.
That's it for the 5 Core Life. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button on this video and pound that subscribe button so you get notified when new episodes drop. Also, please fill out the free 5 Core Life Evaluator quiz. It's a great way to get a baseline of where you are in the 5 cores and which of the 5 cores you need support. In addition, you'll get some actionable advice that you can apply and start improving your life in the areas that you need it most. That's it for today's episode of the 5 Core Life Podcast. Have a wonderful day.
Get moving. Gain momentum. Join the movement. Join Emmett by going to moremomentum.com to take a free life evaluator quiz on where you currently stand in each of your 5 cores.